Thank you, Michelle, for making time for us today. Michelle's, I'm going to have to say this again because I didn't, forgot to, in my excitement, forgot to hit the record button. So Michelle's an adoptive mum. She's also an expert in publishing. She's done you've done a TEDx. So we're going to be talking how adoptees can sell more books.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing that I'm thinking about is it's all going to be social, right? Is it all about social media? I mean,
it's not all about social, but we're going to talk about social. I actually got my start blogging about foster adoption issues and wrote a book about it. And that was 25 years ago, and morphed into this full-fledged publishing business where I actually, it's interesting, Simon, even though I don't really go out there and talk a lot about how I'm involved in the adoption triad, like I adopted my daughter, so I come from a different perspective, but it's like half of my clients that I know about, like we don't always talk about it, but half my clients at some point or another will share an experience about how they're somehow involved in an adoption triad. It's amazing how energetically we kind of gravitate to each other. So I went off script a little there, but I'm pleased to be here. Thank you so much. And I would love to talk about social, but not just social. I want to talk a little bit too about how when you write your book, you're suddenly putting your story out there for most people, right? And that's not an easy thing. It wasn't an easy thing for me. And I had someone read my book recently, and I wrote it. Well, my daughter would be so my first book was 25 years ago. My adoption book was not 25 years ago because she's only 19. Let me backtrack a little bit there, get my own math right. My adoption book was about 17 years ago. And when I had someone read it recently, and I want to shrink, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said all that. I changed the names. I changed all the foster kids' names. I changed my daughter's name and all that. And I stopped the book at the point where I adopted her. And so her personal story isn't really in there very much. But, you know, all of us, when we put our stuff out there for anyone to read, especially years later, it's re-triggering. I don't want to say traumatizing because we don't have to look at our stories that way, but there's always this stuff inside that it brings up. And so someone read this book that I'd written like 15 or 17 years ago, and I went, and even I, who know better, who like coach and publish and talk about these issues all the time, even I kind of shrunk. And so, raise your hand if you also have those kinds of issues. Oh my gosh, I put all my dirty laundry out for the whole world to see and read, even if it's not dirty laundry, right? And that's a cool thing. So I have no idea how old David is there, but many of us here are probably a little tiny bit older. And, boomers are like, I'm a boomer. You keep your mouth shut. You don't put your dirty laundry out there. My daughter, who's Gen Z, is like, it's all out there. There's no secrets. It's all out there. We talk about anything. She talks about everything with her boyfriend. It's like, it's all out there, right? Yeah. So I think there's also a generational difference.
Yeah. I've started my book 4 or 5 times now.
Yeah.
And I've got to 10 or 12,000 words, and I've never got, and I've not been happy with the structure, or I haven't been clear about how who it's for. And then I realized that actually I far prefer talking to writing. Yeah. Someone put a comment on today on Facebook saying he's sure, like me, creates a lot of content. And well, yeah, because I love talking to other adoptees, and I'm full bore at this. People say, Are you retired, Simon? Somebody said, are you retired? Are you joking? Like, full on. The thing that came into my mind as you talked about shrinking, Michelle, was this: we hear these phrases bandied around, and they're absolute BS, right? This thing of like getting in our own way, right? So we've written this book, and we're getting in our own way. Well, there's only one of us, right? There's only one of us. We can't actually get in our own way. You can't do that. What's going on is some sort of belief, some kind of, maybe it's the retriggering stuff that you've talked about, but some kind of belief. There's a self-limiting belief there that's popped up, and it's saying, I shouldn't go out there in the world and tell people about my book, or I can't do this, or it is a belief. It's not us getting in a way. It's some part of conditioning that we've picked up, maybe, as you say, like from the boomer generation. We don't do this stuff. Like, right. Prince Harry was kind of doing okay, I think, and everybody was blaming Meghan. And now he's done his autobiography, and he's oversharing in many British people's opinion.
Right.
That's what the newspapers say. So he's now, he's now become Americanized. Why is he airing his dirty laundry in public? And some people, a few people that were on the fence, I think, are backing out. So he's taking more of the flak now. Right. But you were saying, you were saying that before the rest of the guests joined us, before the rest of the listeners joined us, that readers want to hear stories. Right.
So the other part of this is when you shrink, and it could. So here's the thing. I did a TEDx talk, and we talked about this, about procrastination. Like, who really cares? Like, we all do it. And I got hate mail around that, right? I got hate mail around. And so then it's like, if I can get hate mail around that, what kind of hate mail is possible that I might get around adoption issues, or right? And so it's not just us getting in our own way or limiting beliefs and conditioning. It's about the feedback that we get from the world, and how do we respond to the feedback. So I got real feedback. It was hate mail around this TED talk, and then it's like, how do I choose to respond to this hate mail, right? So when we're in something that is more intimate, more exposing, like adoption issues, right? Very personal, then of course there's going to be some fear or some trepidation or even excitement. But all of that you're putting out into the world, as soon as you get some feedback, if it's feedback that you weren't really wanting, you're going to respond automatically to that, right? And so the problem I see, it's kind of a weird word, but the problem I see with that, especially even in my own instance, like with the TED Talk, is then I shrink because that's the feedback I got. And then I have to work on being brave again to go back out there. And so we really do, especially in today's day and age with social, have to protect our own energy and our boundaries. And what are we going to read? And are we going to read the trolls? And just share our story. We were talking about this too, when people were just starting to come on. No matter who comes on this and who listens to this later, I trust that the right people will get whatever they need to get from our conversation, Simon, right? So when you're sharing your story, you have to share with an open heart, without fear, without trepidation, without expecting or wanting any kind of feedback from the outside world, because whatever the feedback is just external feedback, and it's not really valuable to your own personal journey and what you have to share with the world.
Yeah. I a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think I was running some events for parents and kids in a. So this was must be 4 years ago. It was well before COVID. I was running events. Parents and kids came to like a meeting room, and I did some I did some work with the parents and the kids about building their kids' confidence, right? So that was about, and I shared this free event on Facebook, and somebody put underneath the comment, put pedo, short for paedophile. I was running an event where parents and kids come, and it's just absolutely nuts. But if we, and like, I thought, well, what can be going on for that guy, you know? It stung, and then I thought, well, there must be something really, really weird going on for that guy, you know? And if we've got to do the stuff anyway.
Right, we got to do it anyway.
And I had a big breakthrough on this sort of subject, you know, this quality versus quantity of impact before Christmas. And I was chatting to an Aussie adoptee called Vin, and I was saying, well, Hayley Radke, who runs the Adoptees on podcast, she's been going 6 years. She's had 1 million downloads. I think at that time I had it in the 30,000s. And he said, Vin said, do not confuse the quality of your impact with the quantity of anybody's impact. And that was like, my mentor's been trying to say that, get me to that message for 10 years, right? For the penny to drop, that if it's just one person. And I was saying to Michelle before we started recording, I had a guy, something came up in my Calendly this week, and I thought, where's that guy come from? I don't know. And it was literally a listener, adoptee, who had found the podcast and was wanted to say that he'd enjoyed what he'd heard, and he was listening to lots of different episodes. He was enjoying what he was hearing from the guests, and that was just one guy. And I just thought, well, if it is all about quality. Yeah. Quality is so much more important than quantity in this area.
So I want to take this and finish kind of your comment about how this relates to social, right? And how you can actually promote your books, because we are going to talk about promoting books here. And what I would invite everyone, whether you have a book, a podcast, a blog, whatever it is, you're on this webinar because you have something to promote, you have a message, you have some inspiration, you have something that you want to share with the world. So I'm going to talk in terms of book, but this relates to anything. You got to really understand who you're talking to. And we're going back to sort of business 101 here. Who's your audience? Who's your reader? Who's your message for? It's not everybody. It's not. You have something specific and unique inside of you that makes your story different, that will energetically pull in that same vibration, right? I know I'm sounding kind of woo-woo, but you guys get it. It is about, like, I can talk to anybody, but when I'm publishing books, my sweet spot are women over 50 who have had some kind of trauma or something in their life. That is most women over 50, but right. But some people have had bigger things happen than other people, right? Or more traumatized, however you want to, whatever words you want to use. I can talk to anybody, but that's my sweet spot. So where's your guys' sweet spot? Where is it that you really want to share your message, and who do you share your message to? And if you're a counselor, do you work with teens or adoptive moms or people, you know, where in the adoption triad do you fit? Is there an age? Is there a gender? Because when you dial into that, and you're really clear about who your prospective reader is and your listener and your audience is, and you focus there on social, you will have a bigger impact. Because you are empathizing and you understand that person, maybe because you've been there or you have case studies or clients who've been there, you're going to have a bigger impact. And then you can dial in and do all your marketing to those people, to those prospective readers. So when we're looking to promote books, let's pretend your book's already published. Today, you're not changing the cover, changing the title. Those are all things I look at when I look at why is a book not selling. We look at cover, title, metadata, keywords, all the back-end technical things. But let's pretend for a minute you're not going to change any of that today. What you can change are keywords, titles, posts, and images that speak directly to who you want to talk to, rather than some generic goldfish jumping out of a bowl saying, you too can do it, or some generic person climbing the mountain saying, I climbed the mountain. Get really specific in your social about who you're speaking to and the takeaway you want them to have and what they're going to resonate with. Does that make sense? You'll have less trolls, less hate mail. We're all going to get hate mail. It's just the way of the world. My daughter, who I mentioned, is 19. You know, she just is always blocking people. Oh, I just blocked them. I'm like, what? What do you mean you blocked them? You know, that's not something I did as a boomer, right? She's like, oh yeah, I just blocked them. They were trolling me. I'm like, okay, I can learn from this, right? You just block. It's a different kind of world out there now with social. And so you will get hate mail, you will get trolled, but it will be less if you're really dialed into who you're going to help, who you're here to serve. And you keep going back to that message. You keep going back to, where's the one person out there that I can help? A hint that I give to when I train podcasting and when I train on writing books and all those kinds of things, take a picture of your ideal client, or even if it's someone famous, like one picture, whether it is a friend of yours or someone famous or a client you've had, and put it up in your writing space, your podcast space, and talk directly to that person every time. Write directly to that person every time, and you will just stay dialed into your particular audience.
Yeah. The big thing in the adoptee community and social is the Facebook groups, right?
Yeah.
That they are huge, and there's lots of them. They are a lot of them are quite dark. There's not a lot of light. There's not a lot of light in there. It's there's a lot of people kind of saying, I feel like this.
Right.
Does anybody else feel like that? So there's quite a lot of validation that kind of goes on. So, I mean, what do we do? What is it? What should we be doing within those groups? I guess we need to pick.
Maybe that's not your audience, right? So, I mean, I'm going to just flip it for a minute. I have a lot of people read my foster adoption book who have nothing, as far as I know, to do with the foster adoption. Try it. It's just a story to them, but it's an interesting story, right? I mean, I read Michelle Obama's memoir, and I'm not in politics. I'm not Black. Like, there's not immediate things that come to mind, right? Some people just like to read stuff. We are not. So I published a book from a woman who broke her boyfriend out of prison. Some of you, well, in the US, you may know her, Toby Dorr. And she's big on, we are not our worst mistake, but we are also not our worst trauma or our trigger or our biggest event. That is not who we are. And I think no matter what we go through, we tend to self-identify that that's us. And so I'm not part of those adoption groups, but I've been part of other things where you get so immersed in that culture that that becomes your identity. And I'm always telling my daughter, adoption is just part of who you are. It's not your life, right? Yeah, you're always going to have that. That's always going to be part of who you are. You're always going to have questions. You're always going to maybe have a hole there. You're always going to have whatever. But that's just one piece of your life. Go have a good life, right? And so maybe the Facebook groups are not the place to promote your book. I mean, you can just promote your book on social. You can do podcasts. You can do Amazon ads. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can blog. Again, who is your audience? And are the people in those Facebook groups your audience? Can you bring light to people who may not want light or aren't ready to change? I know there's therapists and coaches in this group. I saw a couple of chats come up about therapists, right? You know more than anybody, you can't help people who aren't at the point where they're at that point where they're ready for the next step, right? So I don't know, I'm not part of those Facebook groups, but is that your audience? Or are you trying to bring a horse, make the horse drink the water, whatever that metaphor is, right?
Well, yeah, I guess with where the name of the session is how adoptees can sell more books, and I'm just thinking that adoptees are going to sell books to other adoptees.
Why? So let me ask you.
Yeah, just
right?
a validation thing.
If you are an adoptee and you're writing your story about, I'm going to make it up, finding your birth mother, is there a healing message in there that is useful to anyone who's had breaks with their mothers? Maybe, maybe not in every book, right? I'm just taking an example. So maybe the audience is really, I went through this intense break with my mother. And if you've had any sort of trauma with your mother, maybe this book will also help you. That's one example, right? Maybe it's reconciling with siblings. Maybe it is, so I'm always telling my daughter, so we have a lot of contact with her birth family. She has a very complicated family. So if she were to write a book, it might be something around, I've got a complicated family. I bet you do too. Right? There, it doesn't have to be just for adoptees. And how many adoptees are there in the universe, in the world? And then how many are in those Facebook groups? I bet you anything, those Facebook groups are just a small portion.
Yeah.
This
is why I got Michelle on, right? Because I have a publishing background, but it's in a completely different sector, and I don't know anything about this. I'm just making a big assumption that adoptees sell books to other adoptees, or adoptees.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. So if you've written a book, and I guess I'd love some comments on this, if you've written and published a book about adoption, is it really about adoption, or is it about a healing journey? Or is it an inspirational book? What is the book really? Is it about adoption? Like, here's my process of being adopted and what I had to work through? Or what is the book really? What genre is it really? Is it about a search for truth?
So I've listened to a couple of audio books and read a few of the people that have been on the show, and they look like memoirs, but a lot of them have got a more inspirational, inspirational feel to them. But it's self-help with a memoir. With a memoir look, it looks like a memoir, but it's actually it's about an inspirational message, and it is about healing, and it is about reunion, and so that's quite a lot of people write it.
Or fractured souls, or like, there's so many different ways we could go, right? Using the example of the Toby who broke her boyfriend out of prison, right? I haven't broken anybody out of prison, but I read her book, published her book, right? It does not have to be a match. I read crime thrillers for fun. I have nothing to do with that. So expanding who you think your audience is the first step. and really understanding what your book's about. You also made a really good point, and for anyone who is self-published, it's actually much easier to do this than you think, and that would be to really look at your cover and see if your cover fits with the genre. And the easiest way to do this is to go into Amazon, look, find the category where your book fits, not the category where you are, but the category where your book fits. Is it really inspirational memoir for women who had fractured relationships with mothers, right? There's a category for that in Amazon somewhere. If that's where your book fits, then go look at other best-selling books in that category and see how your cover stacks up. Because at some point you got to go into marketing with this. If you want to sell books, you do have to learn a little bit of marketing or find someone that can help you with this. Raising my hand. Because you want to make sure that your cover stacks up. If someone is looking for a book or is just scrolling through Amazon and looking at books in this genre, and there's two covers, is your cover clear and interesting to someone who does not know you? And if they're looking at two covers, which one would you pick?
Yeah. The other thing that I see, because I Google everybody, you know, I Google people before I invite them to come on the podcast, and I Google them again, right? I Google them again before they
Google myself. Yeah.
And I look at where they are on Amazon, right? And there's this thing called the Amazon author page, and
right.
a lot of the authors that I talk to aren't using that author page to its full extent. So you see people that they put a load of blurb on there, they put a link to that, they put links to their socials. You can't actually put links in, right? But they put the URL so that you can copy the URL and put it into your browser bar. They put a link to their website. And then they have we'll get onto that in a minute in the speaking circles. If you're looking for speaking, I think if you're just looking to sell a book, you don't need your own website, or do you? I don't know, but if you want to be a professional speaker, you've got to have your own website. But people don't take full advantage of what they can do on that author page.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even if you have a publisher, you still get your own author page. So depending how you're published. Yeah, there's a lot of free resources. The Amazon author page is one of them. You've got to have a really good book cover. You've got to have a really good title. You have to have good metadata. That's all the keywords, the synopsis, the back end information. You have to have an author page. All of that's free, easy to change, easy to fix if it's wrong. Don't freak out. If your book's not that well written, don't freak out. The cover matters more than how well written the book is. I hate to say that, right?
So, it's like when you're in the wines, you're looking for wine, and sometimes you just pick, a wine just because the labels, you like the label. Yeah. Can I ask, what's your opinion on, by the way, self-publishing and trying to go through a traditional publisher? Is there pros and cons, and which because right now I wrote a memoir, and I don't know, my first thought is going through a traditional publisher, but I also thought about self-publishing.
Yep.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So Simon, can I jump on that?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
All right. And I'd love to know in the chat, maybe you can watch the chat, Simon, how many people here have already published, just so I get an idea. So Megan, thanks for the question. I'm just going by my experience in the US. I'm one person, I'm one publisher. You're going to get, just like anything, just like asking someone about adoption, you'll get 20 different, answers. My experience, if you want to go through a traditional publisher, you need a minimum of 20,000 followers on either an email list or social, engaged followers, not bot followers. And then you submit a package to a traditional publisher. You have to have an agent to submit to one of the big five. It takes about 2 years from acceptance until your book is published, and then you get 5 to 7% royalties. So that's one way to publish. Most people don't have an email list or engaged social of 20,000 or more people. Some do, most don't. So for most authors that I work with, traditional Big Five is out of the question. Then it is, if you're going to self-publish and do it correctly, you are going to spend some money, or if you're going to go with a hybrid publisher, you are going to spend some money. You need to have money or resources for high quality editing, a really good book cover, all the metadata. I did see that question, so I'll talk about that, and how you're going to market the book. You got to go do review tours, podcast tours. You have to do some things to market the book. My example this month has been about Michelle Obama, because she released her book like a year or 18 months ago. I don't even know now. And she's still out there promoting her book. And she's with Simon & Schuster. You have to, as an author, whether you're with a big publisher, have self-published, a hybrid publisher, a medium publisher, authors have to promote their books to sell books. And so whether you go with someone like me, we charge for editing and services. We don't charge for publishing, but we charge to publish, or self-publish. You're going to end up probably in the long run spending the same amount of money. So the question is, do you have resources to put out a high quality book, or do you want to put out a lead gen? So we're going to talk about this in a minute. Something to bring people to a website, bring people to your coaching, bring people to your podcast. Are you using your book to share your message and your story? But your book is not the only way you're helping people. Maybe you have a coaching practice. Maybe you do public speaking like Simon's talking about, maybe a podcast, maybe an online course, maybe a retreat where you help other people work through whatever they're going through as part of adoption. And so you want to think about all these things, not to overwhelm you, but like, what is the real purpose of the book? I work with people who it's their passion project. They want to put out their book. They're going to put out their book and they hope it helps some people. And then they're done. And then other people who are building a whole business and using their book and speaking to help build their business, to help lots of people out in the world sell coaching or their therapists or whatever. So that's the quick answer to your question, Megan. I'm happy to jump on a call with anybody in the next week or two privately if I can answer it more fully. The metadata, because I see Simon's got a question, but I just want to say the metadata is all the back end stuff, keywords, synopsis, links, all the stuff that is attached to an ISBN in the US, or that's attached to an Amazon page, that tells aggregate websites, Barnes & Noble, W.H. Smith, booksellers.com, all those places, where to put your book and how to pick up your book. It's all the coding and all the words, the keywords that happen in the back end.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Meg. What we've talked about Amazon. What about the other kind of platforms, the other platforms that are out there to promote and sell our books?
We sell about 80%. I've published 101 books so far. I have 30 in the pipeline.
Wow. So
far, about 85% of all our books are sold on Amazon. I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon. I, would wake up in the morning and might say, I'm not buying a dang thing from Amazon today. I'm going to go only local. I'm going to get and use my feet and walk down the street and only buy local. And then by lunch, I've hit that Amazon buy button like 3 times, right? Love-hate relationship with Amazon. They are the #1 booksellers in most of the world, not the whole world. So there's a couple of things here. I do not recommend KU, which is the free. If you're part of Amazon Prime, you can read books for free on KU for nonfiction authors. I've not found that it works. So if you have a book up on KU, I would just take it out. And that's Kindle Unlimited. And so if you're on Kindle Unlimited, you're not allowed to sell off Amazon. You have to stay exclusive to Amazon. So I am getting to your question, Simon, but that's the first thing. Amazon sells for us about 85% of books. Having said that, that's 15%. That could be a lot of money you've left on the table, books sold, people you've helped, if you're not after that market. For some fiction authors, I say just stick with Amazon and do KU, do Kindle Unlimited is better. For nonfiction authors, it's better to go wide, as they say, and get everywhere. There's all kinds of distributors out there you can use. And so, especially ebook, audiobook, like we put all our audiobooks on Spotify now, and taking them off exclusive to Audible. And because Spotify is turning into the #1 audio book platform in the world right now.
Wow, I didn't know that. I'm an Audible fan, but I do know as a consumer, but I do know that it's very expensive, the technical hurdles to get you. But I do think that there's a lot less competition for adoptee stuff, adoptee memoirs on Audible than there is on Kindle, for example, because it's a higher barrier to entry.
Absolutely, it's a high barrier to get through the Audible filters. And if you're not David or Simon, I don't know who else here is podcasters, they don't accept bad audio. So you got to have really good audio to get on Audible. But, even though we're moving to Spotify, they have high barrier too. Right. And we're keeping on Audible. So we already have, when we publish or produce, we have high barrier. I think for most people, being everywhere is better than not. Have ebook, have a paperback, have an audiobook, get it out on Amazon and other distributors. Promote your book. You mentioned about a website. If you're doing a book as your passion project and you're writing this book and you've put your time and your heart and your soul and some money into this book, and you put it out there and you move on to your next passion project, that is okay. Do not beat yourself up if you only sold 100 or only sold 1,000 books. It's okay. I'm a ballroom dancer. I'm never going to make my money back on ballroom dancing. I'm never going to go win awards for ballroom dancing. It's okay to do stuff just because you want to do it, right? Especially in the US, we're supposed to monetize everything and be successful at everything and go do. And it's like, who cares? If you just want to write the book and get the book out and that's enough for you, then that's enough. Having said that, if you want to sell books, you do have to build. What else are you doing that's attached to it? Are you a coach? Are you a podcaster? Are you going to have a course? Are you going to do retreats? And then maybe you do need a website to tie it all in. Yeah. So that's if you're just doing a book because you want to sell a book, you can run Amazon ads and sell more books. You can run Facebook ads and sell more books. You don't need a website. If you're selling other things that go along with it, you are going to need a website.
So I just want to mention a few resources around here. So I mentioned this to quite a lot of people and they've not heard of it, but there's a big website called adopteereading.com. So if you're looking to find out what's going on and what and you basically you need to be listed on this thing, right? Adopteereading.com.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. See, there's I stumbled across it last September. I think there's about 1,000 authors on there, something like that, 700, 1,000 authors, adopteereading.com. I also want to mention a kind of, so you can see what other people are doing. A Facebook group called Adoptee Influencers. Have a look at that. And another one, there's this. If you're looking for, like, okay, give me the tactics. There's a book called I think it's called 1001 Ways to Market Your Books by a guy called John Creamer. Is that any good? Are there better books than that, or have you come across that?
So Amazon changes all the time. There are some key things that never change. Go speak. I have an author who sold 20,000 books going to farmers markets. I don't know what it's called in the UK, but you know, where you go.
Farmers markets.
Yeah, same thing. Okay. 20,000 books, just taking his book and going to like local trade fairs and farmers markets and whatnot. That's a lot of books for anybody. 20,000 books. There are some things that don't change, but that perspective, that approach may not be for everybody, right? And so you got to find the ways that work for you. So I don't know that particular book. I've heard of it. There's a lot of books out there. You find the pieces that work for you and then stick with them.
Yeah.
Find the things that work for you and stick with it. Do you want a podcast? Do you want to speak? Do you want to blog? Do you want to promote? Do you want to do an email newsletter? Do you want to get on social? Choose one and start there. Don't try to do it all. Choose one thing and get good at it and find your people, find your niche.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like you can, it's one of those things, isn't it? You can go broad or you can go narrow, broad, narrow, broad, narrow, broad, narrow.
Right.
It's like, so I'm going to put links up to these little resources. So this webinar obviously is being recorded. I'm going to upload the video to my YouTube channel. I'm going to email everybody out that registered, and then in the blurb underneath the YouTube, I'll put the links to 1001 Ways to Market Your Books, the Adoptee Influencers thing, the adopteereading.com as well, and obviously a link into Michelle's.
My email.
Sorry?
Anyone wants to connect?
Sorry, do you want?
Well, you can put my email in if anyone wants to.
Right, I'll do that as well.
My
Yeah.
website or whatever.
So I guess we kind of we jumped from the social stuff to the in-person stuff. I know a lot of people. So there's a guy called Ed DeGangi who came on the podcast. He's done a lot through libraries, right?
Yeah.
Libraries and booksellers, local book retailers. And he's really gone to town on anybody that he can get to talk to locally. So you can do this big global thing on Amazon, and then you can dive down and do what you're doing locally. Now that, and local book readings. You can do, and obviously you can do readings in person and you can do readings online. You can have an event. You can use, I use Eventbrite, right, to publish all this thing. You can do an Eventbrite. You can do an event, and that's a free platform to use. It's a free platform to use to Eventbrite. So there's
I want to go back. I want to like poke the bear here for a minute, Simon, because you said go wide, go narrow, go wide, no, go narrow, and but I would say, your strength is better at talking. And so you're speaking, podcasting, and even though you keep going to write your book, which I can help you with, by the way, but if you decide to do it, you are not going that direction. So I would just come back to what you were saying about disagreeing with me a little bit, saying, but I think you are sticking to your strengths. And that's what I'm saying. Choose blogging, choose podcasting, choose speaking, go online, go local, kind of find your strength there is, I think, what I was saying more. And don't try to do it all. Find the thing that you do best and start there. Because I think that's why you're successful too, Simon, is you're good at what you do.
And behind the scenes, I've got an army of freelancers helping me do stuff.
Yeah.
I I don't do all the research. I do a second pass of the research, but the first pass is all done by other people. I use Upwork.com, you know, and I invite a lot of people to come on the podcast. I have a lot of conversations. I have a lot going on. It's full on, and sooner or later, you know, like on Wednesday, I had a huge day, right? So I've been going 2 years, just over 2 years now, and I had 500 downloads in one day. But given I've only had 48,000 downloads in 2 years, 500 in one day, and I thought, finally, right, we're going to skyrocket. This is it. And then Thursday, it went back down to normal again. You know, like it's the passion.
So what caused that? So this is an interesting marketing question. What caused the jump?
I don't know.
Did somebody retweet you that you don't know about?
I find Twitter pretty pointless, actually. Well, I do like.
Did somebody promote you that
I don't
you
know.
don't?
I'm seeing it.
Here's a tip, because I know you probably got some more questions, but here's a tip. Make sure you have a Google alert out for yourself, your name, your book title, and so forth.
Darren, it wasn't one episode. It was 500 across the whole malarkey. The whole channel. So that was the thing. That's the thing I looked at first. Was it the podcast? Was it the episode that I just landed, that I released, and suddenly that was powerful? But it wasn't. It was 500 across the thing. And I use Simplecast for podcasting, and I use the cheap version. The next version gives me more data, but how would I action that particular data? I don't know. And at this point, I'm not trying to monetize anything other than speaking. I get paid. I get every now and again a speaking gig comes along, right? So that's kind of what I'm focusing on in terms of my monetization. But as I tell everybody, I'm 55, 56 now. I'm getting, my income comes from my pension and the 2 rental properties that we have. So I don't monetize the podcast. I haven't written a book to monetize it here. But yeah, I am playing to my strengths. You know, if you like going out and meeting new people, then go out and meet new people and talk to them about your book. Go to farmers markets, go to the library, go to the bookstore, contact the schools. And yeah, and that's the things. But yeah, those. So what have we not really? Oh, what have we not touched on? We're not touched on the kind of like adoptive parent stuff. Like there's, and you know, the speaking gigs. One of the places that I get speaking gigs is from the people in each state who support resource parents, right? So, and I spend a lot of time trying to open doors there. So that's when I did this. I did this talk in New Mexico at 1 o'clock in the morning, UK time, because that's 6 o'clock Mountain time, right? So there's a website. I'm going to put that in the links, and it links it. The data isn't 100% up to date, but it's a good starting point. It lists all the foster and adoptive heads of department across all the states of the US. So that's one way to go. And then obviously you've got adoption agencies in your state, right? So adoption agencies in your state if you want to do this, if that's your audience, if you want to like, who's already got your audience? This is what they also always say, isn't it? Who's already collected your audience that you can help partner with, that you can partner with. So adoption agencies have a load of adoptive parents on their books. So contact them and ask them find out what they want, right? Find out what they want. Don't go in and saying, will you help? Will you tell your parents about my book? That's not going to work. You've got to do it completely other around. It's what's in it for them. This the whole thing, isn't it? One of the first business books I ever read 20 years ago was people only listen to one radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah. Another thing you can think about along these same lines is it's actually pretty easy. It may feel overwhelming, but it's actually pretty easy to do a special print run of 250 books or 500 books or 1,000 books and have someone sponsor that print run. So if you have a specific nonprofit or a specific agency or a fundraiser that your book works with, that could work with, there could be a partnership or a match there. They could sponsor the book and you can put their logo on the back of the book and the chapter that they've written inside the book, those kinds of things. Pretty easy to do that. And that's another way to get your book out to agencies and people that might help co-sponsor.
Yeah, that was mine. That's what I used to do, sponsored educational publishing.
Yeah. And
I've tried that for the monetization of the adoption work, and it's a tough one because I'm trying to get
the right partner. You just have to find the right partner.
The right. It's got to be the right. It's got to be the right partner. I haven't got.
We have an author that partnered with Samsung and her book. They partnered with her book, but she's huge on social. She has like 1 million TikTok followers or something. And so slightly different audience, business audience, but it can work if you have the right partner.
Yeah. What about things that we can do actually on Amazon itself, like getting more reviews? And does that?
Okay, so reviews are the #1 way to sell books. If you don't have reviews, you won't sell books. If you have reviews and you're still not selling books, then it's your book cover, probably. I'm just going to say it probably is your cover. If you have reviews and you're not selling. We find 10 to 12 reviews is the bare minimum you need to get any traction on Amazon. Once you're over 75 reviews, they will start showing your book with people who've read this book have also read this book. We see you're interested in this book. You may be interested in this other book. Your book will start showing up, we're finding, after about 75 reviews. You're not allowed to ask for 5-star reviews. You're not allowed to use Amazon's logo anywhere ever, even if you screenshot that you made it to bestseller or got an amazing review. Do not use their logo. You are allowed to ask for reviews. If Amazon can figure out through some weird algorithm in the back end that it's your mother, or your sister or your best friend, they will not allow that review. They actually have an algorithm that filters out reviews that they think are your friends and family. So you can pay like $100, $200 to get reviews, legitimately, to go on a review tour and get reviews. Goodreads is a great place to get reviews. Amazon does not allow reviews from anyone who has not spent at least $50 a year with them. Most of us do, but there are people who don't like Amazon. If you continually buy cookbooks and crime thrillers and don't leave reviews, and then suddenly you're trying to leave a review on an adoptive book, Amazon's probably going to say, no, it's not a legit review. So if you have people leaving reviews who leave reviews for nonfiction, and yours is nonfiction, it'll probably go through. So it is not easy to get reviews. Number one way to get reviews is to have a good book, have a good book cover, have a good book title, and then keep asking for reviews. Ask anybody, ask everybody, put it on social, put it out to your email list. Do ask your friends and family. It may or may not go through. And if it doesn't go through, don't panic. It's just Amazon's algorithm.
Yeah. So you mentioned Goodreads. What other websites should people be looking at? I mean, yeah.
Those are the two big ones that matter. Those are the two big ones that matter the most. I don't know, W.H. Smith, they're still in the UK, right?
They're still in the UK. They're only still going because they make money out of the travel. This is just a silly.
Okay. Yeah.
They have news agents at airports and train stations, and the reason that they're still going is you can't just buy one pen, right? So if you go to, like, if I go to York Station and I'm going to London, I need a pen, right? I've forgotten pen. I need a pen. You can't just buy one, and it was 10p like it was in the old days. You've got to buy three.
Right.
So they get you by this distress purchase. Yeah. I don't know why I'm sharing this with you. It's just
well, I was going to say, there are plenty of other places to leave reviews, Barnes and Noble, websites, wherever they bought their book. All of that matters. It all matters. But the number one place is Amazon. Number two is Goodreads. That makes, again, it's the 80-20 rule for those of you that know about that. If you can get 80% of your reviews on Amazon, 20% on Goodreads, the other 0% almost doesn't matter.
What about doing a promotion to get more reviews to then hopefully?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You can do a review tour, and we host those. The cheapest, and I don't do it, but I work with partners who do it. $100 US, $200 US. You might get 5-10 reviews. It's a good way to get started. It depends, again, how much money you want to put into your book. We have also spent up to $20,000 to do a big full-blown PR promotion for somebody, and we haven't found that anymore that really works. So I would not recommend you do that. I think promotion under $1,000 still works pretty well to get your book up and out. Again, if you're using your book to sell a coaching package and you spend $1,000 and you sell a $3,000 coaching package because one person bought your book, you're ahead. You got to think about what your goal is overall. What's the big umbrella here? And keep your book as part of that big umbrella marketing package. If you just want to put your book out and you've got an extra $200 to put towards marketing, and you don't really have a business, then you get to decide if that's what you want to do.
Innie, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
I'm just curious, somebody else had touched on here about writing about adoption or being an adoptee. And I know earlier in the conversation, Michelle, you had mentioned about how your daughter is an adoptee. So that's not who she is. I don't want to misquote you, but like that your whole life is not you're as an adoptee, you're more than adoption. You have your own story and you have your own journey. Do you feel that by generalizing that our writing is an adoptee memoir or somehow adoptee related, that would sort of minimize the audience? Because the story that I have and the story that another adoptee has, we're both adoptees, but much of my life may or may not have to do with specifically my adoption. So would it be more beneficial and more, would there be more exposure if you were to treat it as some sort of just generic memoir or a trauma memoir, or do you narrow yourself by specifically putting yourself in an adoptee memoir niche?
Yeah, I totally understand your question. Love the question. And I don't know yet. So I think, again, it's part of this big conversation we've been having for the last hour. What is your message? Who do you want to talk to? What's in your heart? Do you only want to talk to adoptee people in the adoptive triad? Do you only want to talk to other people who've been adopted? Like, what's in your heart? What's in your message?
Well, I personally feel like me as an adoptee who has read other adoptee memoirs, when I'm specifically looking for that, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those keywords and I'm looking for those reviews.
Right.
However, I do feel like there is an overall consensus. I mean, I guess I shouldn't really be generalizing, but I'm going to, that the perspective of an adoptee and their experience is not wanted to be heard by Gen Pop. So the general public wants to, it's not fair of me to, again, it's not fair of me to generalize this, but the general public does not want to hear about your destroyed life story growing up as an adoptee, because the general public wants to know that there are adoptee stories where there are families coming in and adopting children, and that there's this lovely Cinderella story. But I would think that if I were to do a writing about my life and specifically how my life relates to adoption, I would of course want other adoptees to read that. But I think more important than that, I would like to find a way to normalize an acceptance of such that there's not always a Cinderella story, so that there be more aware. I don't know what I'm trying to, so that more people could be aware that like what we're going through is not just Inhi's story.
Right.
It's not just Nicole Chung's story. Like it's like there's a very common thread when you join these adoptee groups. And I feel like we're just in this echo chamber of like an adoptee relating to another adoptee that's reading the adoptee book, that's reading another adoptee memoir, and we're all agreeing with each other because we have a shared experience. But what about like how to get the general public to understand that it's not just one bad story, that they're so I guess it would be more targeted toward, like I said, Gen Pop. But that's kind of like a sneaky way. Like, I want you to read it. You're not an adoptee, but I want you to understand about the adoptee world. But I don't want you to not buy the book or not give it a try because I've labeled it as an adoptee memoir.
Right. So you write a good book. You write a really good book. So just to be clear, my daughter does not have a Cinderella story. I'm trying to help her understand that, right? So, and I understand that you don't have a Cinderella story, or, I don't know, maybe you do now, but you've been through some stuff, and that's the story you want to tell. That's the story you want to tell. And I think you answered your own question by saying, other adoptees are going to understand this, but I want to get to Gen Pop. You said that. You said, I want everybody to read this story. So you got to write a really good story that brings in people who don't understand that world. Yes, Simon.
May I interject? I think, yeah, exactly. I think you answered your own question. And I think I'm an adoptee, and I think that's the reason why I wrote my book, because I feel like there needs to be more stories out there, that it's not a Cinderella story and everyone has their own experience. And I think we need to hear more about that. You mentioned Nicole Chung's book, and I did read that book, and I thought it was good, but I felt like it was just like a kind of a pretty picture. I don't know. I just felt like a lot of adoptees have just different stories, and I think we need to elaborate on that more. So if you need motivation, if you need inspiration to write your story, then go for it, because I think other adoptees need to hear it.
So can we just jump to Darren's question about, so Darren's asking, sorry to cut you off. I'm conscious of time. For self-publishing, what ballpark range of money does one need to publish and promote a book?
Yeah, I just threw it in chat because I wasn't sure if
right.
we'd have time. Through my company, without editing is 2,500. Editing is the big thing that costs all the money right now. Editing is number one. Then you want to get a really good cover, and then you want all the research on the back end around the metadata. So that just gives you a general idea. And editing is where you're going to spend most of the money, either wherever you get that.
And to go back to the other question, sorry, I didn't see the names of the people that were chatting about that. I would say, write the book that you want to write. Write the book that meets the aim that you want to deliver. Think about what you want the book to do and then write that book. Write the book. So I haven't written a book because I prefer talking to people than writing. Writing is a solo activity, and I get my buzz out of community having conversations like this. So, but it took me a while to realize that, right? And did I think about that? Did I really think about that? No, but I kept on, started writing my book, and ages and ages, and then like after a month I was thinking, well, I'm not getting anywhere, and then I stepped back from it and thought, right, no, okay, forget about the book. Right, I guess in a certain way I'm gathering. One of my ideas about the podcast was to create the audience that are going to then buy the book. Was kind of one of the reasons that I was thinking of doing it, but I still haven't done that yet. I'm still enjoying it more this way. And on that point, Michelle's did, as mentioned, a podcast tour. So I've got there is a in the resources when this video goes live, I'll also put a link to there's a website that does the top 70 adoption podcasts. And so you can, some of them are for adopted parents, some of them from adoptees. If you're going for that market, then you can have a look through that and contact those podcasts. I often recommend people for podcasts as well. So I can do that too. So it's just 10 past the hour. Any last questions or thoughts?
I have one, Simon.
Yeah, go for it.
This is Doug. Keywords are very important to selling the books on adoption, something that we'd all have in common. What keywords would be recommended to use when you're selling your book on Amazon or Smashwords, as far as that goes? What would you recommend? There must be at least 10 common ones.
Yeah, so we do, I'm not actually published. Actually, I published an adoption book at the end of last year. We look at keywords every month. So you can go into Google and see what's trending. If you start typing adoption, underneath will come up all the keywords that are trending. We actually have a software tool that we spend money on that helps scrape keywords and what's going on in keywords. I would think things like, not politically correct words like orphan and abandoned children and those kinds of things might still be on the fringes of good keywords because other authors may not use them. But if you go into Google and start typing, related keywords will come up. So the short answer is I don't know, because we look at it for every book based on every book. But I would put in adoption in the US, what happens to adopted kids, are adopted children happy, all those kinds of things, and see what comes up in Google right now that's trending.
So there are people that make a living just out of keyword research. There are tools that do just keyword research.
That's why we spend money on a software.
So do some Googling around it and try some different things out. it's one of those where there's the simple way, like Michelle's making, and then there's all those people that make it out like it's really, really complicated. And they're only doing that. They're doing that, well, to a certain extent, to sell you something.
We're all trying to sell something, right?
So we're all trying to say something, but there's the smokes and mirrors around it. As like Michelle gave you the way that you can do it.
The easy way, yeah.
The easy way. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you everybody for coming along to this, and thank you, Michelle, for sharing your expertise in this area. Yeah, thank you.
It's not always easy for me to be in this community because I have my own wounding around the whole adoption triad piece, right? And so just like all of you, I'm sometimes re-triggered by hearing these stories. And my daughter, you know, when I adopted her 19 years ago, I had rosy glasses, right? And it has not been the easiest for either of us. And so I just really appreciate you welcoming me in, Simon, to have these conversations, and appreciate you and appreciate having a safe place to come be me as an adoptive mom where I don't always feel safe showing up. So thank you.
I'm curious, Michelle, would you be willing, or I guess I should be asking both of you, Michelle and Simon, would you be willing to do another one, another, Zoom where we could maybe discuss when you write a memoir and being mindful of the people who are in your life and exposing, because what is your story is also theirs. So if your daughter were to write a story and she were to reveal some strong emotions, you as an adoptive mother specifically, like what that would do to you, or what right we have in what our part is in telling the story. Is that something the two of you might entertain in the future?
Well, I will. I've led lots of people through that process, and I can give you the 30-second synopsis, which is write it all down. It does not mean it's going to get published. Write it right from your heart, because you can edit it later, and you want to get it all out because it will help your internal processing to write it if you want to write it. And for the record, my daughter and I have a really good relationship. I just want to put that out there, but it has not been easy for either of us to get to that place. So I'm in the middle of it too, but just from a different, totally different perspective.
We'll definitely look at, there's some great questions that come up on here. I thought today, like I was going to focus purely on the kind of the marketing side for people that have already written books. I'll do no. We'll do another we'll do another one for wannabe authors, and we'll look at in the adoption space, or adoptees who want to write books, and we'll do that, definitely. Yeah, well, as long as, because I don't know anything about this, right? So as long if Michelle's up for it, then I'm
in. Yeah. Thank you.
Michelle, can I ask you, are you interested in books by other adoptees, like their experiences, learning about their experiences, so you can, does it give you a better understanding about your daughter, reading about other adoptees' stories? Does that interest you? I'm just trying to
it's actually, even though I have done a tremendous amount of work, it's pretty triggering for me personally.
In a
because I can't go back. I can't go back and redo. I can't go back, right? So I work on, that may not be the answer that you were hoping for. My daughter and I are working on our relationship, and that's all I can do.
Yeah,
and
I'm estranged from my own. I'm estranged from my own adopted mom. It's very complicated. Yes, I understand.
And we work on the relationship with her birth mother, and she does not want to invite her birth mother to her wedding, and I think she should. And it's complicated.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story, I feel like.
It's complicated, right? And
yes. Well, I'd love to talk to you more about this outside of this. If you can leave your contact information.
Sure. Is that all right, Simon? If I
Of
stick it
course,
in?
yeah. The whole point is communication, sharing, helping one another. Yeah.
I'll stick it in. Yeah, I have all my own stuff around all of this, right? So I'm
And
grabbing.
you guys said that you offer personal or one-on-one about or feedback about books we're writing or advice or that you can give, or do you charge?
So I am running a business, right? I do charge, but I do offer 30-minute free consults with no sales. Like I don't go out, I'm gonna put my thing in here, my book.
Okay,
noodle.
great.
I don't like, it's not a 30-minute, I'm gonna sell you something, right?
Yeah.
Just 30 minutes, we'll show up, we'll talk, I'll give you some advice, and then if we're gonna do something later, we'll do something later. But
Okay, great. Thank you.
Michelle helped me on. I was thinking about the book, and she helped me on thinking about. She encouraged me to think about what's the reason for doing the book. So what next?
Yeah.
And when I didn't, and then I thought about that, and what next one. There wasn't a what next, and it wasn't appropriate for me, right? That to write a book. So I think, no, just double down on the podcast. So yeah, think about why you're doing it, what you want it to do, and who your audience is, and stay true to yourself. It's an internal job. This is about what we want to do as individuals on this planet. You know, I was talking to an adoptee this week, and he said, if you've got an imposter syndrome, you're probably trying to do something that you don't want to do. You're probably being an imposter. So if you're not sure about what it is, like, don't try and be anybody else. Just try and be you. People want a genuine, people want to write from honest, genuine, straightforward people. They want to listen to genuine, straightforward people, don't they? We don't want to follow hypocrites. We're not interested in pretense. People see straight through it. Thank you very much, listeners, and we'll do this again in a couple of months, hopefully. So yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This has been very, very valuable information, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Bye.